Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning. Welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View with myself, Baz. I hope you've all got a nice, strong cup of coffee this morning. I bet there's a few hangovers. I bet there's quite a few hangovers out there this morning. With it being Easter Monday, a lot of people will be off work today. If you are working, you're absolutely bonkers. It is Easter Monday. It's a fantastic day to be a Celtic fan. The sun is shining outside. I hope it's shining wherever you are. Brendan Rodgers, I'll say good morning to everyone that's in the chat first of all, because there's a nice little bunch in. Stephen Johnson's in. Catholic Rebel did say it before, by the 55th minute yesterday. Turns out he's right. Lanky's in. Feeling nice and fresh. Woof. I'm feeling nice. I only had the one glass of wine yesterday, which was good. MT Celts by Grabs in, Catholic Rebel Stephen Johnson, and Chill Pills in the house also. There's plenty of other that I haven't mentioned it in the chat that are lurking about in the background. Gus McSimmons is in also. Long day yesterday. Yes, it was a long day yesterday for a lot of people. And I want to talk about Adam Ida first of all. I think I've got the subs thing sorted out as well. That should be live again. I think that Adam Ida, the response that he had to scoring his goal yesterday and to winning the game was absolutely phenomenal. But all eyes were on Callum McGregor. Callum McGregor is a player who is another Celtic player to reach double figures this season. Now, with Celtic winning 5-0, Callum McGregor earned man of the match. He's the 7th Celtic player. That lucky number 7. He's the 7th Celtic player to hit double figures this season. That's something that hasn't been done since the 1966-67 team. The team that went on to win absolutely everything they played for. Now we know that Celtic can't go on and win the Champions League this year, and they're many years away from it. But is it fair? Is it fair to put such pressure on a team? Now, it's fine equaling the achievements of so many players hitting double figures, and we absolutely love the fact that so many players are hitting double figures at Celtic this season. Brendan Rodgers has spoke about it, saying when you look back to the start of the season and the midway part of the season, Brendan Rodgers spoke about the fact that, look, I'm not fussy if Kyogo's not scoring. You lot are making an issue out of Kyogo not scoring, but we're winning 3-4, 5-0. And for me, as long as we're scoring lots of goals, that's the main thing. But when it gets to comparing teams, and we always do it, you always compare to the best that you've ever had. And the 1966-67 team were the best that Celtic has ever had. They won absolutely every trophy that they went for, including the Champions League. I'll come to that big grab in just a minute. I'm going to come to that in a couple of minutes, because Brendan Rodgers said something about the standards towards the next 5 games before the final. So is it fair that we put such pressure on this team? And is it fair on the media putting such pressure on this team? I know it's comparing them and they have achieved it, but you know, that's when players can start to get a bit jittery, or will they? And that takes me on to the next bit. Brendan Rodgers said yesterday in an interview after the game that he's setting standards. He's going to set standards. We still talk about, yeah, we do. We still talk about the Lisbon Lions up to this day. And the future fans will be talking about Callum and Jamesy. You're right, Lanky. You're right. I've been saying this for a while now. We are living what our grandfathers lived. And it's hard to take it in, because we're living through the time of legends. We're living through the Scott Browns, you know, the Tom Rodgers, the Lee Griffiths. You know, it doesn't matter what he did in his personal life, but the Lee Griffiths of Celtic in the modern era, the team that got us to 9 in a row, achieving 9 in a row for the second time. For the second time in the club's history was absolutely phenomenal. And for a club on the other side of Glasgow to celebrate stopping Celtic getting to the 10, well, it's the second time that we got to the 9. And you always get to the stage when you get to the four, when you get to four in a row, as we're about to do, the 55th title, where is it? The 55th title is about to come in. And 55 times Scottish champions. When we do win that 55th title, Celtic will not want to stop. The players will not want to stop. It's going to be a case of who does Brendan Rodgers hand the baton over to? And that's where the big chat will come from. Because I don't believe that Brendan Rodgers... Oh, you're joking, Lorna. Wait a minute, there's breaking news. Let me just double check this. Ah. The Vatican News has just released that Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, 21st April 2025, age 88. Pope Francis, born 1936, died this morning, 2025. Oh, God. Having the fact that I do live in such a Catholic country, and the Easter celebrations that we've just had over the last month, the Easter parades and the community, you don't think, oh Jesus, 2 seconds. If you'd seen my personal social media, and if you've seen one of the other channels that I do have, Spain is a very, very religious place, and it's an honour to stay in a place where being Catholic is celebrated so openly. And when you have the community that you have here, and you can celebrate Catholicism the way that you do here in Spain, you get in touch with I suppose getting to 88, yeah, you need to look at the bright side. Getting to 88 is a fantastic thing, and it's a sad day. Wait till I just text message. getting to 88-year-old, and I should really change that 55 Scottish champions one. No, that's the wrong one. Give me a second. When the picture that I put up on Good Friday, in the community tab, was I took that picture basically as I was sitting, and the Catholic Church in this country is phenomenal. And the fact that it is still deeply religious, even though there is, we watched them coming out of church on Friday. We watched the procession, and there was Muslims watching it, and all the bullshit that you get in the media that's anti-Muslim and all the rest of it. But you get a country like Spain, who has a Muslim population going back hundreds of years to the Moors, and they live in peace with each other, and they come and watch the dominant Catholic celebrations in the country. It is sad news. It is sad news. It is sad news, but we move on. We move on. God bless Pope Francis. Jesus Christ. Why is it not? Right. So getting back to talking about Celtic, this morning. Brendan Rodgers, Eklund, the 67 teams number of goals and number of people who scored more than 10 goals is an absolutely remarkable achievement by anyone. The achievements and the way that the Celtic fans still talk about, and the older Celtic fans who witnessed the 66-67 team, that team used to score for fun. That team scored goals. You know, it was a delight to watch. Brendan Rodgers said it in one of the interviews yesterday. Brendan Rodgers said in one of his interviews yesterday that he doesn't like the side-to-side passing stuff. It's not the way that he wants to play football. He prefers that he wants the team to pass forward, and it frustrates the hell out of him when his team does pass sideways to sideways, and he wants them to pass forward. And you saw that yesterday with the one-touch football, and the ability to outmaneuver the St Johnstone team. Now, the St Johnstone team yesterday set up where they were man marking, and Brendan Rodgers says that Callum McGregor was absolutely amazing yesterday in having the ability to be able to find space. Not only to be able to find space to help his teammates out, but he said the whole team played perfect yesterday because there was nobody static in positions. The whole team was moving about and moving different positions, which is what they've been trying to do all season, and their whole season. And it kind of came to the front yesterday, and Brendan Rodgers said, look, the whole team was amazing yesterday. Now that we've got 5 games left in the league, he doesn't want them to be dead rubber games. He wants these games in the league to mean something, and he's setting the team own, and he's going to set the players own personal targets. He is going to set them personal targets to achieve. Now, everybody's going to want to play in the cup final, and that is it. So everyone's got something to play for, everyone in this current team. But it gets back to my point: is it fair to compare this current team, who are on the cusp of winning a treble? Is it fair to put them up there on a pedestal with the 1967 team? Is that fair on the current squad? And is it fair on the memory of the 67 team? Because what they did at a time where the majority of the players were for around about 30 miles around for Glasgow. Do you know, they're all local lads. When you look at the modern Celtic team, it's a team made up of international players from all around the world. And I suppose that fits in well with this channel, actually, because we always say that Celtic fans are all around the world, and they are, because I've seen it on the stats. Anyway, the space that Adam Ida and Engels and Taylor made for others to play yesterday goes under the radar. It's not only that, Big Rabbi. When you look at the team, when you look at Alistair Johnston, nobody noticed this yesterday. Nobody's really spoke about it. Alistair Johnston was coming into the middle of the park also. Not also was he doing overlap runs with Nico Kuhn in the game. He was also coming inside to the same position that Greg Taylor takes up in the midfield. Because they knew that there was... I give Brendan Rodgers a bit of stick, the fact that he took a player... He took a player and didn't... Now, we still need to find out if he was even there, or if he was injured and it didn't happen, but I don't know. There was a young striker that was pictured, whose kit and picture was put out by Celtic, but he got nowhere near the bench. Didn't even get near the bench. So... with that being said, where does Brendan Rodgers go from here? He got it right yesterday, but he still has an issue at Celtic. Brendan Rodgers still has a big issue that he has to overcome. And it's fine as saying that this group of players, are fantastic. But if the manager really wants to be legendary status, he wants to go on and be in a lucky band of managers who's won the treble for Celtic 3 times. There's not many that have done it, and there's only one that's done it. But the manager that did it before him, that won trebles, was good at bringing youth players through. And this is where Brendan Rodgers is failing at the moment. And I don't like to say that Brendan Rodgers is failing at many things at Celtic, but the reality is that Brendan Rodgers is failing at bringing through youth players. Whether we like it or not, he has failed at that. He's been here 2 seasons and he's not managed to convince one youth player to stay at Celtic. He's not managed to convince one youth player that they have a future at Celtic. Now, they can say all they want, it's down to finances, and the players go on and get a better deal elsewhere. But yesterday, there was no youth players on the bench at all. Now, you're going to say it was a really strong bench. Who do you leave off for a youth player to come in? Well, for me, Johnny Kenny was one player that should have been on the bench. Johnny Kenny should have been on the bench yesterday. Stephen Johnson, you're an absolute amazing guy. Lanky said, winning either the Europa League or the Conference or the Europa League is still some achievement and would boost the players on for more success. It would mean not qualifying for the Champions League. Now, in 2003, Celtic dropped out of the Champions League and into the Europa. That isn't there anymore. And the way that we got to Seville was by getting kicked out of the Champions League at the group stage. You had that to fall back on. Stephen Johnson's amazing. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for that this morning. Big shout out to Stephen, who's just done a £20 super chat. The reality is, as Brown Warrior says, the reality is that Celtic weren't a buy-to-sell club under Jock Steenbaz. We have been since 2012. I don't think that we've just been that since 2012. I think that we've had we've had this business model, and I think it's took a lot of years for us to become successful at this business model. We've had the same business model for years to try and bring players in, make them better and sell them on. Maybe not under the Martin O'Neill era, but under Gordon Strachan, definitely. We brought players in to try and make them better, to sell them on. Definitely under Ronnie Dyler, that's for sure. We brought players in to try and make them better, to sell them on. And then under the current manager, his first time round, a lot of players were brought in to make them better, to sell on. Brendan Rodgers needs to start bringing through some youth talent, because that's where he's going to be measured on next. A lot of people said that he's going to be measured this season. A lot of people said that this season would be the season that Brendan Rodgers, he won't be judged on winning the league, because Celtic fans were easily, we knew that if this team turned up, we could win the league. We knew that we could win the cup. We're on the cusp of winning the treble. If we win the treble, people will say Brendan Rodgers done a fantastic job. But the reality is, he's failing on one part of the job. He's made us better in the Champions League. He's won us a treble. He ticks all the boxes. But I think the next big thing that Brendan Rodgers, and especially going into the very last year of his contract. Now, we all hope that Brendan Rodgers does sign a new contract at Celtic, and he goes on for another couple of years. I think he's got another couple of years in him as a Celtic manager. But we need to start looking beyond Brendan Rodgers, because if Brendan Rodgers isn't the man, we've just spent 20 million. Now, I don't know how the place at Barrowfield is looking. I'll try and get down to it when I get home in the next couple of weeks. And we've just spent 20 million on this facility. And I've said about it before, we need to start getting a return on that investment at some point. We're getting a fantastic return on the investment that we made into Lennoxtown all those years ago. It's a fantastic facility. You know, when Celtic want to bring in a player from abroad, they bring them in and they show them Celtic Park. No, they take them to Lennoxtown first, and they show them the training centre and the training facility that's up there with some of the biggest clubs in the world. It's a purpose-built training facility that's away from the stadium, away from the noise of the background, the backdrop of the stadium. Some say that's a good thing, some say it's a bad thing. When you look at the managers that came through and trained down at Barrowfield with Celtic Park, there was no more that could get the players up and really buzzing for the fact that they play at that ground just up the road. You know, sometimes they would walk down to the training field down London Road. But the fact that in the modern day, you want to bring players in and you want to say, this is where you train every day, and wow, this is brilliant. And then you take them to Celtic Park and you go, this is the stadium, and they go, fuck, whoa, this is brilliant. What stadium? What the surroundings of the stadium's absolutely brilliant. It looks great. It's like a big club, you know, it's like a big European club like they want to be. But then when it comes to the youth setup, we're an absolute shambles, and let's not deny that. Like he says, Brendan could give Vata and Cummins a chance, but they wanted to play weekly. Of course they do. Of course they do. And you want to be able to, but you want to also have them saying that they want to have a foot. Look, Stephen Welsh came through the system, hasn't played weekly, right? You need to get the likes of Stephen Welsh, Tony Ralston. You have to have current Celtic players training with these younger boys. You have to have the younger players training with guys that have came through the system. You're James Forrest, you're Callum McGregor, you're Stephen Welsh, he's out on loan just now, you're Tony Ralston. Right? You have to have them training with these guys so that they talk about what to expect. And I think that that's what's letting the club down at the moment. You have to have them talking about what to expect coming through the system at Celtic, and how to just leave that little bit of space to know that when you come into the first team, you're not going to get a game every single week. Callum McGregor needs to talk to these younger players and say, look, when I come through the system, I got put out on loan. You know, Charlie Mulgrew, get him back at Celtic. What's wrong with Charlie Mulgrew being back at Celtic in some kind of coaching capacity and talking to these young guys? Somebody else that came through the system, went out on loan to Aberdeen, came back, had a fantastic career at Celtic. There's, do you know, Dane Murray, he's been injured, yes, and it's unfortunate for him. It is. Morning Baz from Drich Kirkcaldy says, Monty, is it that bad? Oh man, we could be back there in the next couple of weeks. Anyway, Brownwater says the 10 million hole in the accounts that the dies of Rangers left is a catalyst for the Moneyball at Celtic. Lawwell making a ton of money from the sales of key players when we started targeting. Rogers rates Kenny, but the problem is it's one bad game and our fans say they aren't good enough. Taylor's won 10 trophies at the club while still being in the starting 11 and abused for it. And that then takes me on to the next bit. We do love to have a go at Scottish players. We do love to have a go at Scottish players. When you look at it, Stephen Welsh, been told he's not good enough. Mikey Johnston, slated every time he came onto the park, but there was glimpses of absolutely fantastic stuff. And Mikey Johnston went, fuck it, I don't need this shit in my life. I don't need the stress. I don't need the pressure. Brendan Rodgers says Mikey Johnston's one of the best wingers that he's ever had. We have to have an integral part of the coaching, has to have some kind of integration with the youth players, especially the players that have been at the club that have came through the system. And it is the next thing that Brendan Rodgers will, if we get into next season, we're going to the Champions League next season, it's all about how far we can finish up the league. And that's it. We know our standard. But I think that if Brendan Rodgers talking about legacy and talking about that he wants to be up there, he wants to be a manager that's done 3 trebles. You know, he could have done it a few years back, but he didn't. He left. He can do it now. He wants to have his own little piece of Celtic history. I think if he wants real legacy, if he wants a legacy that will outlast not just him, and Brendan Rodgers has spoke about this before, he spoke about a legacy that will outlast him and bringing in players and having players at Celtic that will be here way after he's gone. But as it stands just now, there's not many players that will. The foreign players, when a new manager comes in, they might not like the new manager might not like the foreign players, and they're moved on swiftly. You know, you need a core of a club, you need a core, especially at any club, at any big club. If you look back to what Fergie did at Manchester United in the 90s, he got rid of every top player that he had in the team at the time. You know, top players at the top of their game. And when their contracts were up for renewal, we went, no, I'm not taking these back on. I want to bring in, there's a youth system that I've been working on for the last 2 years. You know, there's a youth setup that we've been working on for the last 2 years. I've personally been going to the training ground, to the youth training ground, watching these guys come through. Does Brendan Rodgers do that, or does he just sit down and get the stats and gets the recommendations from? That's what an elite manager does. That's what an elite manager. If Brendan, we talk about elite managers. Fergie was an elite manager. He would go to the training ground. When we signed young players, he would go to the house and speak to the parents and say, "This is why I want your son to come to Man United." Do you know? And I think that the modern day, that's taken away from the first team manager. And if Brendan Rodgers really wants to have a real legacy at Celtic, more than what he does have, I think that he really needs to start bringing through youth players. And Dane Murray, yes, he's came through the system, and he's unlucky that he's injured at this time of the season. He's definitely one for the future. But so is Jude Bonner. So it's going to be interesting to see that Brendan Rodgers talking yesterday that I'm going to set players individual targets over the next 5 games. How does he then incorporate the youth players in the next 5 games? He's got 5 games to have a real good look at youth players. It's his big opportunity to look at youth players. Mikey Johnson was never good enough for Celtic. He didn't have the mentality. He says, chill pill. Youth system takes 5-10 years of planning to make any player first team. I don't think it takes as long as that, because maybe you're right. Maybe it does take that. And I tell you, I'm going to say it, but when my cousin's son comes through and he's a first team player for Hearts, don't say that I told you that this guy is going to score goals for fun. This young lad's going to score goals for fun at Hearts. Celtic did try to get him 2 years ago, but he decided to stay with Hearts because they've been so good to him in the youth setup. Anyway, can't give young players a chance just because they are young. They need to excel, says Monty. But how do we... Turley's injured, Lanky. I'm sure Turley's injured. One, it says, how can you give young players a chance just because they're young? They need to excel. But he's been there since he was 8 years old. He's just turned 16. So there you go. He's been there since he was 8 years old. That's why he stayed at Hearts and didn't go to Celtic. Because they changed them school and stuff. It's phenomenal what Hearts have done in their youth setup. I mean, they took the young guy out of school in Fife. They pay for his train through to Edinburgh every day to go to school in Edinburgh that's nearer the academy, near the university in Edinburgh. Connor Dow, he's in the B team now for Hearts. He's in the B team for Hearts. He's going to be some player. He is going to be some player. Had a couple of assists at the weekend for Hearts. I don't follow Hearts, but I see what his dad's posting on Facebook every week. He's going to be some player. But yeah, but he's, you know, it is about, Celtic don't seem to have that conveyor belt. They have the young players coming through and we seem to get stuck. You know, you look at Hearts bringing on younger players. You look at other teams bringing on younger players. So we just seem to struggle. And I know that it's hard for a Celtic manager to bring on youth, but Martin O'Neill did it. You know, Martin O'Neill did it. Gordon Strachan did it. You could even say that Lennon helped it on a bit, you know, but we just seem to have stalled over the last couple of years. So anyway, it's okay, lads. My boy's playing for us one day. He scored 3 against Motherwell at the weekend. They won 5-2. The odd defeat in the main squad and they get slaughtered, says Scoosh. You can't give young players a chance because the pressure of winning every single game can't draw the odd or defeat and the main squad gets slaughtered. But you can bring youth, you can bring one player in. You don't have to bring in wholesale changes like what Fergie did at Man United back in the day. You can bring one player in, and I think that having the ability to bring one player in at the end of a season and give them game time and then integrate that player into the main squad. Now, they're not going to play every week, but they're going to get... If Adam Ida can get 10 to 15 minutes every single week, Johnny Kenny can get the same. But because of the formation that Brendan Rodgers plays, because of the formation, it's hard. So then you're then looking at the midfield players, and young midfield players are coming through, and it's like, well, if you look at the bench, you know, I mean, Yang wasn't even on the bench yesterday. You know, as wingers. So, I mean, we're bringing in 20, 21-year-olds, Arne Engels, it's 21. That's the standard that our youth need to get at. Now, you then have to then start questioning the coaching of the youth system. Is it the right coaches that we've got in to bring these players to up to the level? You know, I mean, McManus was a fantastic player at Celtic, but is he really the right man? Is McManus the right man to take these players up to the next level? I don't know. Anyway, I think there's a player there in Johnny Kenny. Yep, I think so as well. Brendan Rodgers even thinks so. For those who have been different for Mikey, if he had scored, Yang was injured. Yeah, I know Yang's injured. As the old saying goes, if they're good enough, they're old enough. Exactly. And it just seems to be that they aren't good enough. When you look at Daniel Cummins is good enough, but Daniel Cummins is a player that has decided that his future lies away from Celtic. So you're not going to get a game. It's as simple as that. You're not going to get any game time. If you're not going to sign a new contract at Celtic, why would you then get game time in the first team? And I totally back Brendan Rodgers for that. But at the same time, you can't have a player that's in the first team who's refusing to sign a contract. You can't have... Brendan Rodgers has a big dilemma this year. He's had a young player in Daniel Cummins whose goal-scoring ability is there to see for everyone. right? And he should have been in the first team, but he's not now because they brought back Johnny Kenny. But in the same token, you can't have Brendan Rodgers turning around privately and saying, well, if he's not going to sign a contract, he's not getting in the first team. But then on the same hand, you've got a player that is in the first team that has refused to sign a contract that's going to walk away for nothing. Yet last year when it happened, when it was David Turnbull, we sold David Turnbull with 6 months to go on his contract and we got £3 million for him. Greg Taylor would have been worth more than $3 million, but it is what it is. Anyway, Brown Morris says your average centre midfield at 2021 is on the same level as Arnie Engels. Not at our club, or even the same level as Lennon Miller. No, they're not, and that's part of yes, Brown Warrior. That is part of the problem, and that's why I've said, is the issue. The issue is not a Brendan Rodgers issue. The issue is the standard of coaching from the B team coaches. And that's that. That's what I think. Anyway, it's not about coaches. There isn't a clear pathway to the first team. At Celtic, they need to be loaned out earlier, not at 19 and 20. They need to be loaned out at 16, 17. They need to get them on a long-term contract before that. Anyway, we started off the video in fine spell. Absolutely fantastic form and with good news. Thank you to Stephen Johnson, who did a £20 super chat. And then the news broke. The news broke that Pope Francis passed away this morning. The Vatican news put out that Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025, at the age of 88, at his residence in the Vatican Casa Santa Marta. Pope Francis, 1936 to 2025. Rest in peace.